Follow along as we continue on our 66 Ford F100 restoration.
And I'm going to be talking about doing a full frame-off restoration without even using a lift.
We'll go over why we chose to do a full frame-off restoration, how we did it, and what modifications we're making to the chassis, and also at the end, what we would do differently if we did it next time. This episode on Extra Good.
Yeah. Well, we're doing a frame-off restoration on this truck, and we've got a couple good reasons as to why we're doing it.
First of all, if you've been following along on Extra Good, we're actually marrying two 66 Ford F100s. So we're taking the best of both of the pieces and putting them all together into one finished truck. So frame-off just makes sense for us.
Another cool benefit is that with the car out of the way, I get access to a lot of areas that would be really difficult with the body in place, like the fuel lines and brake lines and such like that. So it really makes working on the truck a lot easier to actually just take it all the way apart and go from there.
A lot easier. Also easier, the key to any good marriage is having enough space from each other. And since I'm doing the bodywork and paint on this project while Ethan does the chassis and mechanicals, it allows us to work in two different areas of the shop, which is much less fistfights.
Good, yeah. I'm tired of getting hit in the face. It hurts. Aw. Oh, well, anyways, another reason is you end up with a better finished product. I mean, you know, to take the frame all the way down and clean it, you can get into those little nooks and crannies that you wouldn't normally be able to get to if you were just trying to do this while the car was assembled. I mean, you can get an okay outcome without taking everything apart, but there will always be those little bits of rust peeking through or little seams or edges that you never get. And it just kind of ruins all that effort. But doing it all the way down, you know, you have that rewarding feeling of knowing that every square inch of this thing is perfect, and it really holds up better over time as well.
I agree.
Do you now?
If you're working on your own project at home, you might be wondering, do I do a full frame off or do I not do a full frame off? There are some reasons why you might not want to do a full frame off. I know for me, just the visual sight of having the car off the frame was really scary to start with. But now that I've done it on this project, it's not so scary, so don't let fear keep you away.
Another good reason why you may not want to do it is space. I mean, I've talked about this before, but space availability is huge and able to do these jobs. And taking a car completely apart makes a car take up a lot more space. So that might be a consideration.
Another consideration could be that the car's already in good condition. Maybe it doesn't have a lot of rust. We got at least one of these trucks came out of a field and has a good amount of rust, so getting the pieces all the way apart is enabling us to really start fresh. But if the car doesn't need that much attention to begin with, then maybe you don't want to go through all that effort.
Yeah, hose it off and wipe it down. It's probably okay. Last thing I can think of would be tooling. You know, it does take some specialty tools to do some of the work you need to pull a car completely apart. And stay tuned, because we're going to talk about the tools later. But just know that there's always going to be some sort of tool that you need to buy, and if you don't have it, it really makes the job difficult.
Tools, gotta have tools.
So probably the trickiest part of doing a full frame off restoration is actually getting the body off of the frame. If you have an automotive lift, then it's really easy. You just grab the body and lift it off of the frame and roll it on out. But I'm not that badass. I don't have the budget for a lift. So if I can't go up, then my only real option was to go down. So what I did is I just took all the front suspension off, made the car as narrow as possible, and jacked the car up, disconnected the body from the frame, and then as I lowered the frame down, I had jack stands that caught the body and kept it elevated while the chassis lowered down from underneath it. And then I was able to slide it out backwards without having to actually lift anything. So that worked out really well. It's gonna be a lot trickier though when I go to put it back together, because it's then gonna have full suspension and drivetrain. So there's gonna be a lot of parts in the way. I'm probably gonna have to call 4 or 5 burly dudes over and have them help me lift this thing up. But that's the trick, man. You know, you gotta get creative sometimes. If you don't have the right tools, look around you and see what you can use as the right tool. But don't use a screwdriver as a pry bar. That's always a bad idea. So we're playing around with my chassis. I know you love my chassis. I love my chassis too. But doing a full frame-off restoration, I mean, really, you take it all the way down, all the way apart. And the trick to doing that is taking everything off the car. I mean, the only thing I left on this frame had rivets in it. So anything that could be bolted on, I took off. And one of the trickiest things to play with is the body mounts that actually bolt the cab to the frame. The way they're put on is they use a fastener that looks like this. It's actually 2 parts. And the bottom part engages with the top part and actually keeps it from spinning. That way the bolt can be tightened down without having to have somebody hold onto a nut from the underneath side. But the trick is these things are wedge shaped. So when they're actually attached, they're pretty well fixed together. So you can't just walk over to the body mount and just pluck it off. And the thing is, it's really hard to determine how this thing's put together when it's actually assembled on the car. So the trick is, you take the bolt out that actually went through the top side, you just thread it in from the bottom side, and then you get a whammer and a drift of some sorts, and you stick it down the hole and you wham this thing and it whoop, comes out the bottom side. Now you can easily take off your body mounts. Usually these things are pretty well rusted and jacked up, so you don't want to start prying on them because it's really easy just to destroy them. And with most aftermarket body mount kits, you might need to reuse these fasteners. So you want to take them out in a way that doesn't destroy them, and that's why this little trick works great, because then you're able to reuse the stuff later.
After we got the cab off the chassis, we set to work getting this chassis clean. The first step in that is using a power washer to get all that crud off. This chassis started a little something like this. There's a lot of rust, there's a lot of caked on, really hard stuff, as well as just the original factory undercoating. Power washing was a great place to start. From there, we used a wire wheel to get in all of the nooks and crannies of this chassis. I mean, a chassis is pretty simple, but there's a lot of bends and curves and corners, so it takes quite a bit of attention to detail to get in all of those areas. We really want to ensure that this chassis is going to be primo extra good for years and decades to come. So after we cleaned it, power washed it again, we finish it up with some heavy duty paint covering that we actually just hand painted on. We used truck bed coating, 2 coats of it, and it's just a hard, durable finish. Should work really well for us. We don't need to look pretty. We just want it to protect the chassis and keep it clean, keep it tidy, and keep it extra good. Now that we're ready to start putting this truck back together, there are a few things that we would do differently the next time we do a full frame-off restoration project in our garage.
Yeah, like I would clean the frame. I would still totally take it down to the frame rails. I would still get it cleaned up and make it all pretty, but I would send it out and get it sandblasted and powder coated. By the time you look at how much effort and time you're going to put into it and in materials for paint, it really doesn't come up being that much cheaper than just taking it to a professional shop and having it totally blasted and powder coated. So that's one thing I would definitely do different, is just let somebody else do a lot of that work, which frees me up to pay attention to the more critical things.
It's a lot of work. And of course, with this truck, we needed to do it here at home. So if you're in that situation, it's great that it is something you can do at home if you have more time than money, or like us, we didn't have a truck to take it out to the sandblaster, so we just wanted to do it. But next time we will also have a lift.
Hopefully.
That is on the next up for our garage tooling out, so it's nice to know you can do it without a lift, but a lift sure makes things easier.
I had to get creative to get the frame off of the cab it's gonna be a lot more creative trying to put everything back together because the suspension and drivetrain are gonna be in the frame when it goes back. So I'm gonna need to call like 4 or 5 big dudes. If you are a big dude, please leave your info in the comments section.
I'll bake some cookies while we're at it.
Yeah, we'll have some beer, I'm sure.
That too.
But 6 feet apart.
Also, if we were gonna do this again, we might invest in a rotisserie. Would be nice to have.
A rotisserie really makes cleaning the bottom of things very easy. I cannot tell you how nice it is to be able to stand upright in a comfortable position to scrape crud off of a surface than it is to be on your back on a roll around creepy crawly and scraping stuff off and having all that crud just rain down on you for hours on end. A rotisserie would be something sweet. That would be very good.
But it's good for the abs.
Yeah, big time. In the lats.
Anyways, thanks for watching Extra Good. We hope you enjoyed the progress on our truck, and we've got more coming up for you next time. Like, subscribe, comment, and ring that bell.
And next time, we're going to teach you how to make plutonium from common household items.